Okay, so now we're going to continue on with ID and class attributes. So what's an attribute? So we're actually going to circle back to HTML to understand what an attribute is. Attributes provide additional information about HTML elements. All HTML elements can have attributes. I'm going to just actually jump down to the next page of notes to show you an example. I pulled this from our index HTML file. So we have this line of code here. A is the tag, but then we included these other two items. And as it turns out, href and target are called attributes. So they provide additional information about our element. So in the case of a link, it tells us where we're going to go to when we click the link, and this tells us to open, when we do open the link, to open up it on a new tab. All HTML elements can have attributes, so it means any tag can have attributes inside of it. Attributes are found inside the tags. They provide additional information about an element. Attributes are always specified in the start of the tag, so you're going to put the tag followed by the attributes that you plan on using. Attributes usually come in name-value pairs like name equals value. So for example, the name is href and the value is index.html. I've also given you another example. I pulled this image tag out of index.html as well. Source and alt are also attributes. So, and they follow the name value pairs. So why did we jump back to HTML in order to talk about attributes? It's because in CSS there are two important attributes we will use called ID and class. So you'll see here that I linked the word attributes back to W3 schools. And the reason I did that is because here you will find a list of all different HTML attributes. Some of them belong to certain tags, but some of them are called a global attribute, which means they can be used for any HTML element. So if you ever want to see a list of attributes for tags, you can come here. So in CSS, like I said, the two important attributes we will use are called ID and class. So we're going to do the ID first because that one's easier and less complicated than class. So the ID attribute specifies a unique ID for an HTML element. The value must be unique within the HTML document. The ID attribute is most used to point to a style in a style sheet. That's what we use it for. So I'm actually going to go ahead and highlight that. And eventually by JavaScript to manipulate the element with the specific IDs. The ID attribute is part of the global attributes and can be used on any HTML element. So let's see how this works. So if I go to my notepad right now, I have my style sheet and I have my index page. So one thing that I notice is that on a given page, I have multiple, let's say multiple H2 elements. But let's say that in my styling, I notice that I have a color selected for every single H2 element. Well, let's say that I really don't want this H2 to be the color I specified. Let's say that I wanted to use another color. Well, what I can do is create an ID element. So I could do something like this. I could say ID equals and then give it a name. And I'll just call this EX1 for example 1. So now the browser is going to go to my styling sheet and it's going to look for styling that has the name EX1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. Before we go further though, let's go ahead and look at that page in the browser so we know how it's starting. I believe the H2 is a green color, if I remember correctly. Okay, H2s are green. Okay, perfect. So let's go back. All right, so now I need to go to my styling sheet. Now, when I make an ID selector, it's going to look different. So I'm jumping up here to the top for no apparent reason. So I first start with a pound sign, and then I have to use the exact name that I put inside the ID. So I'm going to go EX1. So sometimes it's easier just to copy the ID name and put it in my styling. So basically, the ID selector is a way for us to specify styling based on an ID name. So now I have to decide what I want to do here. So for that one, I'm going to go and I had all H2s were green and the font style is italic. So why don't I make an exception here? And let's go ahead and change the color. And I'm just going to change the color to blue. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save. So now the next time I go to my index page, and if you recall, I changed the styling for my favorite sports team. So if I go back and look at that code and I do a refresh, now you'll see that it is blue. It's still also italic because the way it works in CSS is this styling is applied to all H2s, and then this is layered on top of any styling that I may already have. So I can create as many ID tags or ID attributes as I'm interested in. That's no problem at all. In fact, maybe I want to use my first font in my EX1 styling. So let's go ahead and add that in there. And I'm going to go ahead and hit a save. So now when I come here and I do a refresh, I now see that I'm using that fancy font that I selected. We can, like I said, create as many as we want. So let's take a look at one of these other pages. And I'm looking for something else I can style. Oh, here, let's go on the media page. Let's apply the new styling here as well. So I can steal the ID tag from this page here, and I can apply it to my media page. And I'm going to go ahead and apply that to both of these H2 headings. How about all of them? And not to confuse you, I could use this anywhere. So I can even apply it to an H1 heading. So if we go to my media page, and you can see that the styling has been applied.